42, one of the most important numbers of all time, as it is the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. Well, at least according to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which I was originally planning to review for today's episode. Allow me to present you with another important number, 19. This is the number of people who sent in guesses for today's episode, more than double the number of people who sent in guesses last week, and only a tiny fraction of the people who watch Ancient DOS games actually send in guesses. So really, I'm just giving a quick thank you to all of you who continue to watch, continue to send your guesses in support, and continue to spread the word. You are all awesome. But I'm not actually reviewing Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Hey, don't look at me like that. The reason's really simple. I mean, just look at it. It's a text adventure. I mean, really, for the format of a video review show, it's like trying to read a book and watch TV at the same time. Reviewing this game would be distracting and not really all that entertaining. But what I will say is that it is one of the best text adventures ever made, so if you like those sorts of games, then you should definitely check this one out if you haven't already. But now, let's move on to the real review. Today on Ancient DOS Games, we're taking a look at Round 42, a very old, independently made shooting game along the lines of Space Invaders or Galaxian. Despite its incredibly simple nature, this game stands out as one of the most colorful games you could play on an old PC that lacks any advanced graphics support. And there's a technical reason why it could do what it was capable of, but before we go into too many details, let's take a look at the game stats. Round 42 was created and released by Mike Pooler under the business name Eldon Software Company in 1986, though much later on the company would be re-envisioned as Pop Software. It's a one-player arcade shooter featuring PC speaker sound and operating under one of the strangest graphics modes ever conceived, the CGA 160x100 16-color mode, which is actually a hacked text mode, where the character heights have been reduced to 2 pixels high and a special character is used so that half of every character shows the text foreground color and the other half shows the text background color. This was effectively the only way to get 16 colors on screen at a time on a CGA graphics card, but very, very few games actually utilize this mode. To be honest, I have no idea why not, because even with 16,000 pixels, you can make some pretty neat stuff. As for its release date, the game was never given a freeware release, but the original shareware release has always been the full game with no limits. So, if you want to try it out, it's really easy to find online, such as at the RGB Classic Games website at www.classicdosgames.com. So as you can see, Round 42 isn't exactly a complicated game. You fly a ship around the screen and you shoot the enemies down. You also have a special weapon you can utilize called the Phasor, spelled with an O, which randomly shoots down one of the enemies still left on the screen, but you can only use it a limited number of times. Fortunately, you get an extra phaser shot with every round cleared, and also after every 7,500 points. You also get an extra life after every 7,500 points, which is kind of useful because a single shot from anything ramming an enemy, or even running into one of the particles from a destroyed enemy, will effectively annihilate you. The controls are kind of interesting and were clearly designed around old-style IBM keyboards that had the function keys arranged in 2 columns on the far left, rather than having them in a single row across the top. This is because F1 fires your shots, and F2 uses your phasor. You'll probably be wanting to remap those in DOSBox, because they can be a little awkward to use on a modern keyboard. That said though, the controls can also be frustrating because the game's keyboard support frequently fails to respond properly, either by having a key stick down or by not even registering a key press. And it's kind of understandable why this game's keyboard support isn't quite perfect. You see, in a joystick or gamepad, you can monitor the state of every single button, axis, etc. at all points in time because there's enough power and bandwidth to do it. Computer keyboards, on the other hand, tend to have 80 or more keys, with 101 being the common number during the DOS days. There was simply no easy way to monitor that many keys at a time, so keyboards instead send pulses to indicate when a specific key is pressed down and when that key is released. This is why so many old games rely on you pushing a button multiple times to move, or just pushing once to start moving and again to stop, because you actually had to handle the keyboard I/O manually if you wanted actual instantaneous control. And this just wasn't something everybody knew how to do. Or in the case of Round 42, the guy making it clearly had an idea of how to do it, he just didn't pull it off perfectly. Now, the title of the game isn't just simply a nod to Douglas Adams, but it refers to the number of rounds you're up against. You have to clear 42 rounds to beat the game, with each round getting more difficult as you face a variety of different kinds of enemies, including what I would call a mini-boss fight on round 13, because that round actually plays the main game theme in the background when there's no other sound effects getting in the way, and the enemies you face there, you won't fight again until the next time you face round 13. There's also special Asteroid and Space Mine sections. And these sections are on a timer, and you simply have to survive for a predetermined length of time to move on to the next round. Though you can also shoot down the asteroids and mines for points. Just be careful though, because the asteroids take several hits, and the space mines shoot out particles in your direction when you destroy them. You may have also noticed by now that every so often you have to fly through a tunnel to get to the next round. These tunnels do get harder and harder to navigate, though they are effectively randomized, so occasionally the tunnel will be really simple, or if you're really unlucky it could be nearly impossible to handle. And all you have to do is ram a single pixel of your ship into the tunnel walls to get yourself killed. A light touch in the controls will really help you in these parts. Another thing too is that the speed of the game is not only based on the number of enemies in the air, but the number of particles too. This means the more enemies there are on screen and the more particles there are on screen, the slower all of these elements move. A good way to really cut the speed down is to hit multiple enemies in a row right at the start of a round. If you can keep shooting enemies down, you'll keep the speed way down and make it much easier to handle everything. Well, at least until all the particles clear and the speed shoots back up. In fact, the final enemy or two for any round will be nearly impossible to hit, but since phasor shots are so common, that's generally the best time to use the phasor, since it auto-aims and never fails. Eventually, once you get far enough, you'll have a couple trios of tunnels to face, and then it's on to round 42 itself, where you go face to face with the final battle against Rainbow Spacefish. Well, at least that's what I call them. They're actually pretty easy, as their huge size really slows the game down, and their shots are easy to dodge too. Once you beat round 42, then it's all the way back to round 1 to start it all again. If you get bored and decide to quit, or if you don't have a choice in the matter because you ran out of lives, the title screen actually presents you with some stats. Just like Galga, come to think of it. It tells you how many shots you took, how many hits you made, and what percentage of your shots were good. One last thing I'll quickly mention about the game is an easily forgotten feature. If you press backspace during any round, your ship will self-destruct, taking all enemies with it. It's a good way to get past a particular round you're having trouble with, but usually only after you've run out of phaser shots, because whenever you lose a life, your phaser stock is reset to just a single shot, including if you use the self-destruct. So yeah, that's round 42. A really simple but fun shooter, provided you can adapt to the frustratingly unresponsive controls. As for Dosbox settings, there's a few of them this time around. Firstly, you have to set the machine type to CGA. Since the CGA 160x100 mode is actually a hacked text mode, it pretty much only works on real CGA hardware, which is why you have to set Dosbox explicitly into its CGA mode. The game will also go disturbingly fast if you leave the cycle set to auto or max, so choose a fixed cycles count that feels like a good speed for your gaming skills. I decided on a mere 300 cycles, but you can adjust that however you want. Lastly, this is a game where you could use Dosbox to map the keyboard keys to a joystick or gamepad, but because of how sketchy the keyboard interface is in this game, I actually recommend playing with the keyboard itself, because if something does go wrong and a key sticks down or fails to respond, you can react a lot faster to it than if it happened with a joystick or gamepad. Anywho, that's all for this episode of Ancient DOS Games. Stay tuned for episode 43, where we're going to restore the world to equilibrium. If you know which game lets you do that, then send your guess to ADG@pixelships.com, and make sure you tune in next Saturday to see this game in all its SVGA glory.